All right, I call to order this May 21st meeting of the Public Works Commission. Commissioner Grayson, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Be happy to. Please rise as you are able, hand over heart, repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Andrew, can we do roll call, please?
Yes. Commissioner Dunbabin,
Here.
Vice Chair Gretton,
Here.
and Chair Hayes.
Here.
We have Commissioner Breton and Commissioner Lakeville absent, but we do have a quorum.
Thank you. Does anybody have, approval of agenda?
Yes, we have the two individuals who are in our audience. They are here for one of the public hearings. Would it be okay if we move the public hearings up to number 7 under presentations? Can I make a
Before or
motion?
after?
I don't think there are any presentations, are there?
I'm sorry,
No?
I was thinking.
Let's
director's
just say,
report. Okay, it doesn't matter because
Yeah.
there aren't any. And are we doing, is your motion to do both?
the motion is to go ahead and move both
Both.
of the public.
So
Okay, we have
moved.
a motion. All right, roll call.
For second.
Motion to move both item 12A and 12B before item number 7. Commissioner Dunbabin,
Yes,
Commissioner Vice Chair Gretton,
Yes.
and Chair Hayes.
Yes.
Motion approved.
All right, then we are moving down to item 12. Request to remove and replace one tree in the public right-of-way at 1233 Owasso Avenue. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, I believe will be presented by our assistant engineer, Carla, who's, I think, making her way up here.
Oh,
But I will start lining up the slides.
do you want us to go ahead and do our announcements before?
oh yeah, we kind of missed that.
No, I would recommend staying on item 12A. Just in another minute. If not, we'll begin presenting. Oh, then we can move forward the announcements then. So we'll pause item 12A to move on to item 5.
All right, do we have any announcements?
Yes. The Hermosa Beach Chamber of Commerce is putting on their fiesta this weekend, May 24th through the 26th for the Memorial Day weekend. And there's going to be a Memorial Day ceremony on May 26th at 1:30 at the stage in front at the acoustic stage. And also tomorrow night at 6, there's going to be an event at the Historical Museum about the aerospace business in the area. So once again, Thursday night, 6 o'clock at the Historical Museum.
Do we have any other announcements? None for me. Should we keep going? We can knock some stuff out.
Yeah.
That's going to be performative anyway.
Yeah. Perhaps we can move on to item 7, the director reports,
So,
if there's some brief updates, Joe? That's all right.
Sure. Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Chairperson Hayes, commissioners, I just have a couple brief things I want to announce tonight. Really, the first being we are pleased to announce our appointment of a new city engineer, Saad Malam, who's here tonight. He was promoted. He's been with the city for a little over 2 years now as a senior engineer and brings a wealth of experience in the public and private sectors. And so we are definitely pleased to be able to promote Saad to that role. He's been dedicated to a city on a number of projects, really complicated projects, diverse range, and so we appreciate all of his help. And with that, that opens a new senior engineer position that the department will be advertising any day now, that will be coming out. And we also have a vacancy in the assistant engineer position. That was advertised about a week or two ago, so that's an open recruitment. And we are pleased to announce that we filled our management analyst position, which was also a long time coming. There was a really difficult position to fill to really help with all the administrative needs of the department and help alleviate our engineering staff from a lot of those duties. So a big hire, so we're happy with that. That concludes my director's update. In terms of the activity reports, if we'd like to go to that, item 7B. The only couple of things that I'd like to highlight on here are with the winter, we had quite a bit of winds that really continued through the spring season. So it is a battle that we fight, Public Works, to continue to push the sand back off the strand and then work in coordination with Beaches and Harbors. So Beaches and Harbors did do a fair amount of sand grading. They had a heavy equipment out over the last month, mostly north of the pier. And then we also worked in collaboration with Athens and our other staff to pull sand off the strand so that we could deploy the ADA Moby mats that are now out. But there was some delay in getting those out because of all the sand grading that did need to happen. But that really was a big effort over the last couple of months. There was a fair amount of work involved with recruitment. That has been ongoing effort. Definitely pull staff away, and our maintenance team continues to do a number of projects. You may have seen some of the utility box wrapping that we did in coordination with one of our CIPs. Our team is actually working now to get the art from the artists and doing the physical wrapping in the field, because now we can print the sticker material and actually do that work. That covers the highlights that I wanted to point out for the activity reports, unless there's any specific questions on them.
Any questions?
Yep. I had a comment. First of all, I went out today to the beach and saw them replacing the gates where the sand has blown up. Who pays for that? Does the county or does Hermosa?
The city does. The county has certain maintenance responsibilities. The beach is ours, so anything on it really is our responsibility, with the exception of the lifeguard towers or the lifeguard headquarters. We do regularly replace the gates. They take a beating with the sand that gets on top of them, and so it is an annual effort to have to go and repair the gates and do repainting on them. But I know we're trying to get it ready for the warm weather season.
The other thing that I would just like for you to make a few comments on the Greenwich undergrounding project. I know what it's about because I live in an area that is undergrounded, but I was just thinking that maybe some Hermosa Beach residents don't realize who's paying for this.
Right, no, thank you for that question, Commissioner. So the city does have a process where residents or business owners can come, or property owners can come forward through the city and form a district to self-fund the undergrounding overhead electric lines through the Rule 20B process. And so in this case, the Greenwich Village North Undergrounding District, There is a number of residents that did come together through a petition process. It goes to city council following the city's underground guidelines, and there's a resolution that was passed to form that district. So the cost of the undergrounding would be assessed on their tax roll. So this is fully funded by the residents that live in that district. Right now, or I should say, staff has been working for a number of years with the district and Southern California Edison and all the other third-party utilities on coordinating the design of that district. And the city has advertised it now for construction last month, and bids are now due next Thursday. So we're really happy to get it to this point. But if residents are interested, our Public Works website does have a web page on how to form a district. There is a fairly involved process to do so, but it's something we're happy to help navigate folks through.
Perfect. And I do have another question on the sand as it blows up against the strand wall. Is the county responsible for removing that sand? Because what has happened is that when it rains, there's no way, although it doesn't rain very often, there's a problem with the water running out through the holes that are in the wall because there's just sand in there.
Yes, so the city has an agreement with LA County Beaches and Harbors, and it is their responsibility to do sand grading activities. Ideally, the sand level should be at the bottom of the wall and graded at an even grade towards the, I guess, where the water begins, where the water mark is. Because you're right, at the bottom of the strand wall, there are, we call them weep holes, that should allow the drainage into the sand. When the sand levels are up higher, it does slow down that drainage ability, and something that we've been working to push the county to expedite some of the grading operations that they did. They did bring in a number of pieces of equipment to try to take a good swipe at it, but we have had so much sand displacement. It's a battle to fight it. The county has committed on a weekly basis to bring in equipment to continue to work on chipping away at pulling the sand away from the wall, but there is a lot of sand that has been displaced.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
And let me see if there was, for the April one, it said the Moby mats are out now, which is great. Everybody really appreciates that. And also, the potholes at 25th Street and Ozone were filled. So the neighbors in that area are very happy and thankful. And I think that was all my questions.
I just have a quick follow-up on the underground district. Does the district pay for the staff time required to deal with all that?
So there is an allowance when we get the bids, they have to then, if they come in on target and go for bond issuance, there will be a line item there to cover staff time through the construction administration, yes.
Okay, I just was curious. That's it for me.
So I was also going to ask about the undergrounding later, but since we all went there now, I'll get my question in. So for example, if there's some sort of a budget overrun, say we get construction bids higher than the budgeted amount, would it be up to the district to find the funds, or is there some scenario whereby the city would make up the difference?
So the goal is to try to hopefully have a healthy contingency because it does have to get assessed to them. I think when we get the bids, that's something that we're going to work with the district representatives. Hopefully they come in on target, but there is a pretty healthy contingency usually involved, but because it is the responsibility of the district to pay. Should it come in higher? Couldn't answer that question tonight, but my understanding is it would be their responsibility. Of how we would actually assess that to them at a later time, I would have to answer that later.
So it's more likely than not that it would ultimately be recovered, or do you not even want to commit to that right now?
I'm not going to commit to that right now.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
All right, that takes care of item 7, Public Works Director Report. We still have the CIP status to go, but let's go. I think we're ready to go to the public hearing, so we're going to skip from 7B down to number 12, and then we'll come back to 7C once 12 is done. So 12A is request to remove and replace one tree in the public right-of-way at 1233 Owasso Avenue. Do we have a staff report?
We do. Our assistant engineer, Carla Vargas, is going to give a brief presentation.
Hello. Good evening, Public Works Commissioners, staff, and members of the public. My name is Carla Vargas, and I will be presenting to you today the request for removal and replacement of one red-bud eucalyptus tree at 1233 Owasso Avenue. On March, staff received a tree removal application from the property owner at 1233 Owasso Avenue. The application concerns a dead tree with a trunk diameter over 12 inches, which triggers a public hearing under the city's tree ordinance when on-site replacement is not feasible. So we are following normal procedure from the Municipal Code, Chapter 12.36. Also want to let you know that public notice was sent on May 9th to all residents within 300-foot radius of the tree. In this slide, we can see the location of this tree. As I mentioned, is in 1233 Owasso Avenue, and the other big intersection there is aviation. So in this slide, you can see the existing conditions of the tree. This is a redbud eucalyptus. The tree is approximately 32 feet tall with a 39-inch trunk diameter. As you can see, the foliage of the tree is, it has foliage, but it's not live foliage. It's gray and it's falling. There is also some curb displacement, and you can also see some health concerns in the trunk of the tree. Unfortunately, this species is too big for a small parkway, making it hard to survive in this environment. As part of the application process to remove a tree and following the municipal code procedures, we requested the property owner to provide an arborist report from a certified arborist, and the arborist report confirms the tree is in a state of severe stress and is ultimately dead, and recommends the tree to be removed at our earliest convenience. Some concerns we have identified for replanting a new tree at this location is that the close proximity of that parkway to the driveway, and also, sorry about that. My next slide. There is currently a water meter on that parkway. So the parkway itself is a 7 feet by 7 feet, and the water meter, it's part of the 2 feet, part of that 7 foot by 7 foot parkway. So per Green Book standard details, for tree well details, a minimum clearance of 5 feet is required from utility meters to install any tree wells. In this next slide, since we are recommending for a replacement at another location, these are some of the available replacements according to our approved tree list. So the donor can donate a Brisbane box, a cajeput tree, a New Zealand Christmas tree. These options are based on Zone 2 from the city approved list. So we are going to work alongside with the property owner for a selection of the tree that can go in any of our city parks. In summary, staff recommends the City Council approve the removal of red bud eucalyptus at 1233 Owasso Avenue and accept 2 replacement trees for planting elsewhere in the city. I am happy to answer any questions now.
Do we have any questions of staff?
I do. It was interesting in the arborist report, they used the term, and you repeated it, that the tree is ultimately dead.
Yes.
I take that to mean that perhaps there's some definition of dead, but that no matter what happens, that death is inevitable. Is that your interpretation?
Yeah, so we also kind of had our city arborist was nearby, and we also had him kind of take a look for a second opinion. We didn't request a formal arborist report from him, so he did say that the tree does have dead limbs, and as you said in the trunk, it has some. I'm sorry, I apologize. Fungus in there, so that's usually.
Okay. My next question is my ex parte discussion that I do go out and walk the site and had a look at the tree and the area where the tree is at and potentially removed. And I did note those, there was roughly a 7-foot by 7-foot square area of dirt there where the tree is located. And then back to questions. There's an aerial view in our package, and there are some white lines, and I gathered that those are the sewer laterals projecting from the property lines out to the into the street.
That's correct. Yes.
And based on that, well, I'm trying to estimate the location of the sewer line. I guess first I would ask, can I reasonably assume some reasonable accuracy of the location of those lines on that figure? And if so, would you estimate, as I did, that the lateral is probably maybe a couple of feet south of the north end of the driveway? Or would you care to look at the figure and give me your assessment? Or
So the lateral is.
in other words, where do you think the lateral is more with respect to the 7x7 area?
So I would, based on what I saw from GIS, it looks like it's around 5 feet. That's a good estimate, 5 feet, less than 5 feet, because I based it on the location of the driveway across the street as well, because in 1233 Owasso, you cannot really see because of the canopy of the tree. So I based it a little bit on the.
Right.
I was putting this picture as a reference of the utilities that we have in that area, to also take into consideration why we need to remove this tree because of the roots and.
Yeah, well, let me ask another question on, what did you say about 5 feet? I didn't hear very well in your presentation.
I'm sorry. So in the Green Book specifications, we have standard details, and one of the standard details is tree wells. So in the tree well, one of the notes is that we cannot place a tree well 5 feet away from a water meter or a utility meter. So if we try to put a tree well 5 feet away from that utility water line, we would be stuck with a very tiny, less than 2 feet against the driveway.
Okay. Thank you for that. And then my last question, have there been any discussions or information passed around among staff and or the property owners as to in the event of tree removal and not replacement with a tree at that location, what landscaping plans might be in the works, given that it's a substantially sized piece of dirt?
Yeah, so we haven't fully discussed since we haven't removed the tree, but something I did discuss with them is that we would, as soon as the tree is removed, we will place a work order with the yard to fix that curb, and then we will talk with the property owner and regarding of like if they need to put compacted soil or they want to put grass or if we need to put some concrete. But since this is not this is not part of a sidewalk project for us, it's we need to really work alongside the property owner on that.
Right. Did you have any idea if the size of that patch will be similar after the construction is done?
Similar in
Size?
construction and the curb, or
Didn't-
I'm sorry.
Didn't you say that, okay, so it would just be a curb replacement and no other paving work?
No, not a.
Is
Not
that
as-
correct?
I think if I could just interject, so typically the requirement would be is the property owner would be responsible for removal and stumping of the tree, and then we typically just require them to restore the area to flush, so possibly bringing in backfill and making it flush. We don't typically landscape parkways in front of residential properties, and so it'd really be up to them whether they want to maintain it without irrigation or if they want to pursue an encroachment permit to install irrigation at that location. An alternative could be, if we are able to do so, install a small concrete panel if the area is deemed so small that it might just become a nuisance in the parkway. But that's something we could work with the property owner. But at a minimum, it does appear that there's some curb work that needs to be completed.
Okay, I'll leave it at that, but thank you for answering as well as you were able. And those are all my questions.
Thank you.
So this is related but unrelated. Are there standards for parkways, like what can go in them, what cannot go in them? Because you said a couple things that contradict what I've done in my parkway.
There is, and I don't know if, Saad, you want to jump in?
Well, we don't have published standards, but in general, the standards that we recommend are things that are not going to be any sort of trip hazards. Besides, as Joe mentioned, if there's any sort of irrigation or improvements that will be a liability to the city. We do require encroachment permits with additional insurance required. But if it's going to be something similar to DG, decomposed granite, or just turf, artificial turf, or concrete, anything that's kind of just flush with no additional landscape, then usually it's just going to be up to that, and it'll be a clean surface, no expected trip hazards. So I don't know if that answers your question.
So I guess my question is, what's the point of having parkways if you're going to pave paradise and putting a parking lot, so to speak? You know, are they intended to be just for trees? Is it, you know, and again, this is related but unrelated. I just know from my experience with Parkway, I didn't know what I could and could not do. I was just, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think the city doesn't have comprehensive design guidelines for parkways through the city, but in all practicality, the city can't maintain the parkways. And so it really does default to the property owner to envision what they want to have in front of their property. The city can only reasonably maintain parkways on commercial corridors. So I think what we do try to do is limit liability in the right-of-way. So landscaping irrigation is called out in Chapter 1216 is something that would require an encroachment permit. If there are low-lying, flat, flush items, we typically don't require permits for those. But a landowner could decide to put DG or grass. They might have to hand water if they don't want to get the encroachment permit to do the irrigation. But I think it does provide a nice amenity to a residential neighborhood to have that grass strip if it's not limited to trees. So we don't, I think if there are nuisance locations, the city has, along with sidewalk projects, work to infill it if we are not able to abate the condition.
Okay, no more questions for me.
Yeah, I have another question. First of all, I did go out there and visit the area. Do other cities have regulations as far as these park? Because I know at one point in time, years ago, that was the deal. The city would plant a tree in the parkway, and now all of a sudden they're outgrowing where they are, and the sidewalks are supposed to be wider because of ADA. And so do other cities have regulations that you know of that say, you know, if the tree's too big, it's taken out, then this is what replaces it?
Are you looking for regulations regarding trees or
No, I'm looking
just general parkway guidelines?
General. For instance, and I'm just going to bring up the next project that we were talking about. This is the sidewalk is narrow. So do we still want to plant a tree in that parkway so that the sidewalk is really narrow? I guess, are there, so what you're saying, there really aren't any regulations that say if a tree is removed in the parkway, that if the sidewalk is narrow, then it needs to be concreted where the tree was?
So I think, okay, there are a couple questions.
Is
So
that
there-
confusing?
Well, the city does have regulations for replacement of trees.
Right.
So there, in general, if a tree is removed, it's required to replace 2 to 1, and that's on site, and that's what the code requires unless it's not feasible
Right.
for a variety of reasons. We do have a parkway tree list that's broken down by zone, and there are recommendations for what species would be most suitable given the width of the parkway. So if you have a very narrow parkway, there are certain species that will do better in a very narrow parkway versus those that might require a little more room to grow. Otherwise, they're not going to do well or will, I don't know, outlive that area. I think the type of tree that's there now is really not suitable for a narrow parkway, never should have been planted. But we have a lot of these instances where trees were planted in parkways where just a great tree, not the right location for it. And so I think we have guidance on what types of trees could be put back. And I think in this case, we're not necessarily recommending put something back in this location given the proximity of the driveway and the limited parkway area. So I think it really just kind of depends. There are cities that do have more evolved guidelines. I think it's something that we've talked about possibly creating more guidelines. I will say the city of Hermosa Beach has a lot of unique parkway conditions that make it much more complicated to come up with a set of guidelines. I think that's something that we've been trying to tackle because your traditional parkway, which is between the curb and the sidewalk, we have a lot of other conditions where the parkway is actually behind the sidewalk. And so I think it's something that I think that we do need to probably over time start to develop a little bit more clearly. But I think it also comes down to who has maintenance and liability of that area that make it a little bit more complicated.
Yes, I'm in agreement with you. I just didn't know if other cities, and I'm sure other cities have the same predicament that we have, and if they had ever written up guidelines for it. So, and yes, okay. It is complicated because every case is different. So.
All right, if there are no further questions, let's open up public comment.
Yes, if anyone would like to speak, come up to the microphone. please state your name, and if you can write it down on that notepad too, and you have 3 minutes to make your public comment.
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Dennis Burke. I'm the nephew of Elizabeth Carter, the property owner. I call her Aunt Liz, or great Aunt Liz. So I'm here today to speak on her behalf. And thank you for all the attention, and thank you to Carla. I know she's been a big help to Liz as we go through this. So I'm here to request a forbearance due to a hardship on the 2 tree replacement issue. The cost to remove this large tree is going to be over $2,000 for my aunt. At least $1,600 to remove the tree and grind out that stump. Another $200 for the appraisal, another $200 for the application to remove the tree, another $200 or so for the right-of-way permit to remove the tree. So we're already over $2,000 to remove this tree. Tragically, about 3 months ago, my aunt became a widow. My uncle passed away, and she is, well, anyway, she's down to a single income, a fixed income. So this is a hardship for her to handle this. And so it may amaze you, but to prepare for this hearing, I actually looked at one of your previous hearings, and the only one that I could find that had, or the most recent one I could find that had a tree removal and a video on the website was one from November of 2024. And there was a nuisance tree there that the city actually removed, and the city paid for the replacement of the 2 trees using street project improvement funds. And this tree is very similar to that tree. You saw the pictures of the curb. It's already destroyed the curb. I don't know if you saw, but on the driveway apron, it's cracked. And there's evidence that you've already had to shave the sidewalk and the driveway apron due to roots displacing the concrete. And so this tree is a nuisance, and it's damaged the street. And, she's ready to pay for removing the tree, but we're looking for forbearance on the replacement of those 2 additional trees. And then just real briefly, the 2-to-1 replacement policy kind of strikes me as a tax on tree owners. On Liz's Street, there are 16 homes that have this parkway between the curb and the sidewalk. And if you guys have walked over there, you've seen it's kind of real hodgepodge. But there are 16 homes. Only 6 of those homes have 2 trees as required by the policy. And one of those is Liz's house. She has 2 trees. And we're only talking about removing one. The other one's going to stay there. So we're all for more trees, but that should not be done on the back of the tree owners. Or at minimum, it would be 1-to-1 would strike me as more fair, or fairer, as my mom tries to correct me when I say that. So we're here to request for forbearance on those 2 trees, on the tree replacement, to see if the city could fund those using the street improvement project funds or park improvement project funds if you want to have the trees at a park, just like you did for those other people back in November. Thank you.
Do we have any additional public comment? Seeing no one, do you have anybody online?
If we have no one in the audience, and Chairperson Hayes, we do not have anyone via Zoom either.
All right, I will close public comment and move on to deliberation. Anybody want to start?
Well, I think we should acknowledge the request that was made just now about the forbearance. What I will say is that I don't know that there's anything that, and I know this is going to sound like kicking the can down the road, but the commission has the authority to approve the tree removal request, but I don't believe there's anything in the code that authorizes us to make any type of financial decisions on this. So I might ask the director if he could suggest a possible avenue if the applicant chose to pursue this further at another venue.
Right. So I'm sorry to hear the story of the property owner, and I'm definitely sympathetic to it. I think the challenges that staff is bound to carrying out the municipal code the way that it's written, and currently the code transfers all costs to the adjacent property owner for responsibility for removal and replacement. There's no provision in the code that allows us to waive fees. That the only way that could potentially be done is through an appeal process to the city council. And our deputy city attorney may be able to weigh in further on that.
So echoing the comments of the director and of the commissioners, as already noted, the Public Works Commission is in an advisory capacity when it comes to potentially waiving any kind of fees or waiving any kind of requirements of the 2-to-1 ratio, because that is in the municipal code. So if the commission would like to make a recommendation to the city council that the fee is waived, or that the replacement trees are reduced, that ratio is reduced, that we can put that in the action, whatever the action ends up being of the commission tonight. But at this point, it's not within the purview of the commission's duties and powers tonight to go ahead and make a firm decision to either waive or reduce that requirement.
So I have nothing else to say on this aspect of the application. I do have some things to say about the removal and replacement at some point.
No time like the present.
Okay, as for the removal, to paraphrase the municipal code, a tree may be removed if the tree is dead, creates a nuisance, or substantially interferes with the use and enjoyment of the property. And in this case, the dead criterion it seems to be clearly met as far as I'm concerned. By the way, in the over 8 years I've been hearing requests, this may be the first dead one. Commissioner Dunbavin shaking her head as well. So I'm fine with the removal. I'm also okay with the recommendation not to replace any trees on site. I appreciate some of the responses to the questions about if there's any way that perhaps we could have installed a tree on a non-interference basis with the utilities there. But between the water meter to the north end and the sewer lateral on the south end, even though seems like there's some room to maneuver in that area, I think it's just not feasible from that perspective. And then also, just for completeness sake, and also in the spirit of some things I've learned in looking at this, there's the lines of sight, and in the staff report it mentions lines of sight, which could either be car lines of sight, which would be car to car, or pedestrian lines of sight, which would be car to pedestrian, presumably walking on the sidewalk. And I think it was a good point made in terms of the staff report noting how close the tree or potential replacement tree would be to the driveway, because the closer it is, the more likely it is to loom largely and be a line of sight consideration. Also, I do like to do due diligence when it comes to the replacement aspect of this, because we really would like to have a lot of parkway trees distributed through town. So I just got to thinking about this a little bit more, if there's anything I learned as well. It turns out that on this street that it's a very narrow street, and it seems like there are cars parked on both sides of the street pretty densely, pretty much all the time, all times of the day. So in my mind, the car-to-car line of sight was perhaps a moot point, but then this was good because it got me thinking about the pedestrian part. And I could see if someone was pulling into their driveway very suddenly and a pedestrian was coming right there and the tree was right there in the way, that would be a potentially disastrous outcome. So this forced me to think about this for this, and I just wanted to share my thoughts on that as it could pertain to future tree removal requests we might hear in the future. So having gone through all that, I'm happy to support the staff recommendation to approve the removal of the tree and accept that there will be two replacement trees located somewhere else in the city as determined by staff. And I would be willing to make such motion. In fact, I do make such motion.
You have any deliberation or?
Basically, that was the same motion that I was going to make before I heard what they had to say about paying for it, and the problems with paying for it. So what they would have to do basically is appeal to the city council, because I do see some dangers with the curb. They didn't plant the tree. You didn't plant. Yeah, they didn't plant the tree. The curb is totally wrecked next to it. The sidewalk also is, it's growing up through the sidewalk, and the electric panel that's next to it, and just a variety. And I understand that the city cannot afford to pay for every tree that does this. So I assume that this would need to be a decision by the city council as far as how they want to go with the payment.
That's correct. Yes, staff is unfortunately unable, and there have been other requests in the past to waive this, so this isn't the first time, but the code's very clear that the property owner is responsible for the cost of maintenance and removal or replacement of the tree. We really don't, as staff, have leeway to waive fees. Staff just doesn't have that authority. I think what the code does say is that any cost to repair sidewalk is not their responsibility. So while the tree removal cost is theirs, it remains the city's responsibility to maintain damage to a curb or the sidewalk. And I know the gentleman spoke earlier, did reference a decision to remove a tree in 2024. I believe that was the very large trees up on 24th Street. And I think, while we do try to see if there are larger street improvements that we can do, that particular location, we were not able to make the curb ramp ADA compliant without the tree removal. And so I think the difference with that location is that we did need to bring that sidewalk and curb ramp up to ADA compliance because it was a liability to the city, trip hazard and non-conformance to current standards. And so that would have been impossible without the removal of that tree at that location. At this location, there is minor curb repair that's required that city would do. But in terms of being able to remove the tree, it's not something that we have a project that's lined up to do that at this time.
Okay. I did second it, but.
Okay, my only comment is tree's dead. I've been in a building when a eucalyptus fell on it. It's not fun. So I think we have a motion and a second. Let's take a vote.
Okay, voting should be open on eScribe if the commissioners can take a look. Okay, vote has taken, 3-0, motion passes.
All right. You're approved to remove the tree, and if you want to pursue it further, I recommend you speak with council. All right. All right. Moving on to item 12B, request to remove and replace one tree in the public right-of-way at 909 21st Street. Do we have a staff report?
We do. Our associate engineer, Andrew Nguyen, will take it from here.
All right. Good evening, commissioners. We have another tree item to present today. This time at 909 25th Street, another tree we are looking to remove and replace, specifically a carewood tree. So just to give a bit of background on the trigger for this request to remove this specific tree, the city has ongoing efforts to address trip hazards, safety concern, and accessibility on sidewalk, as Director San Clemente mentioned before. As part of these efforts, the city routinely do sidewalk repair projects where we, look at different portions of damaged sidewalk throughout the city and remove and replace them as part of the repairs. And at this location, at 909 21st Street, we did see this damaged location here that we are looking to include in the scope of the upcoming sidewalk repair project that we have lined up. And as you can see in this picture, the sidewalk is damaged that you'll see further in the following slides, and we believe that this damage is caused by the adjacent carewood tree. So again, we're looking at 21st Street at 909 21st Street between PCH and Prospect. Just some closer look at the damage of the sidewalk there. As you can see, it's uplifted at some time. At some point in the past, I believe the city did come in to put in some asphalt to help mitigate some of the trip hazard, but of course that's just a temporary solution. The permanent fix would be to remove and pull back the concrete and redo the sidewalk panels. But in order to do that, this tree would have to go. We would not be able to keep the existing carewood tree there while completing the repairs. If commissioners do recall, which back in 2021, about 3 years ago, we did take an item to Public Works Commission to take a look at carewood trees very similar to that one on 21st Street, Hillcrest, and 24th Street to remove several trees with the same situation, causing damage to the sidewalk adjacent to the trees. And this was done as part of the previous CIP 186 and 190, I believe, the previous paving project. And as part of that paving project, it did include repairs to curb ramps and sidewalk around the streets that were being paved, which included Hillcrest, 21st Street, 24th Street. So as you can see, these are some pictures that we took of the repairs that were made 4 years ago and how they are looking now with the replacement trees. As you can see, the sidewalk, I believe, has been holding up great, including the trees are doing well. I've spoke to some of the neighbors in passing, and they're pretty happy with how things have turned out with the repaired sidewalk and the new trees that are put in place. So essentially, we would be looking to do the same thing here. We will be pulling a small tree well, looking to put in a more appropriate tree. In these pictures, we had planted, I believe, cherry plum tree as part of the last repair project. So we may be doing something similar tree here, depending depending on the owner's preference. So yeah, like I mentioned, we have talked to the property owner at 909 21st Street to reach out, get some input, and do some coordination. After speaking with them, they have brought up about their concerns with that damaged sidewalk in front of their home. And they can see that it was also caused by the tree there. So they are in full support of removing that tree if it means being able to repair that sidewalk. And, as such, we will be coordinating with them with the replacement of the tree there. They like the cherry plum tree that were planted down the street, so we may be planting that, but they were interested in some other possible options as well. But that would be something we would work out with the property owner when we are ready to replace the sidewalk and replace the tree. So as such, we are recommending the approval to remove that carewood tree and accept the installation of one replacement tree in front of 909 21st Street and one replacement tree at another location in the city. And that is the presentation, and if commissions have any questions, we are here.
Do any commissioners have any questions?
Yes. And I visited this site too. Since the city, and I'm going back to the payment again, and because the city plans to perform repairs to the damaged sidewalk, and think that the damages are related to the Parkway tree, who pays for the removal? What entity?
Right, so in this case, the city would do it because it's part of a larger improvement project. We've identified this location as a trip hazard location, and so to properly excavate, we can't perform our improvements without removal of the tree. And so there is some efficiencies in cost of doing it all at once. If the city were to go do it, we can excavate, remove the tree and stump it at that time, remove the roots that are in the way with same contractor and then restore the area. And so I definitely see the differences in the two situations. I do wish we had the ability to waive fees in certain circumstances. But I think we do try to abate conditions where we can with a larger project. And I think this is an example of one where we do have a real safety need to address. So the city will step in.
Okay. And that's what I was wondering, if that might be the difference. Do we necessarily have to put a replacement tree in per the owner, or can we put cement in? Because there is some kind of an underground equipment.
Yes, Commissioner
to
Dunbarton.
it?
There is a Verizon box next to it. I would say in terms of telecommunication, the issue with sewer laterals and water main is that if you have a leaky sewer main or water service line, that moisture, that source of moisture, those tree roots often target that, which is a concern planting a tree right next to a sewer lateral or water service line. With telecommunication lines, I believe there's a bit more leeway where there shouldn't be any water from a telecommunication line, so the roots shouldn't be kind of invading those conduits there. So in this case, it is an option to not plant back a tree there, but we would be comfortable with putting a tree there, as we haven't had any reports of issues with those telecommunications line from that box.
Is there any ADA laws, whatever? Because one thing I did notice with this particular tree is that between the the dirt that the tree is in and the owner's, for lack of a better word, the owner's property, it's not really his property, it's probably city property, but where he has his grass, it's only like 2.5 feet, maybe 2 feet. And I did look down the street, and I don't know if trees have been taken out, but there's a sidewalk. The sidewalk continues going east as the width of a normal sidewalk. And so to me, it sounds, I guess the idea of leaving a tree there whenever you're making the sidewalk only 2.5 feet wide.
Yes.
Are you run into, my question is, have y'all run into that before where you actually had this same sort of circumstances?
Oh, yes, Commissioner. Good
That's
question.
my question.
Yes, good question, Commissioner Dunbarton. We do have, limited right-of-way in certain areas of the city where we have wider sidewalks, where we get like 6 or 8 feet to work with, where there's plenty of room to put in a nice big tree well and tree, and still have the ideally the 4 feet of sidewalk that we try to shoot for here in the city. At this location, the right-of-way is definitely only about 4 feet or so. So if you recall, the work that we did in 2021 as part of the paving project, you can see there, it does pinch down narrow to where that tree is, and we did measure it. It is 32 inches, which is the bare minimum that ADA does allow when you can pinch down over only a certain distance. You cannot make the entire sidewalk 32 inches over the entire stretch. You can only do it for a very short distance, which I believe is either 2 or 3 feet long, which you can see is how long that tree well is. So we would essentially be doing the same thing. We would be making a smaller tree well while still allowing those 32 inches just to pass by that tree. before the sidewalk becomes 4 feet again. So,
I guess I'm trying to, so as far as the ADA rules go, if it's just part of the sidewalk, is that small of a distance, it's okay?
yes, yes.
I mean, that, a small width.
Yes, there is an allowance for ADA where if you have obstacles in the way, whether they be tree or fire hydrants or signposts, and you are limited with how wide of a right of way you have, we are allowed to pinch down to, I believe, 32 inches. Again, you can only do it for a very short distance, like 2 or 3 feet, before you have to go back to the 48-inch wide pathway to allow travel. So in this case, that's what we will be using here. Again, ideally, we would have more right-of-way, and we could put in a 6 feet sidewalk here with a, and then still leave 4 feet of sidewalk with a 2 feet tree row. But in this case, we are limited. We do not have as wide of a sidewalk along 21st Street as we do in other areas of the city. So we would just have to keep the tree row, like we did in the previous project, pretty small, and which would limit also the type of trees we would plant as well. Now, again, to your point, Commissioner Babin, if there was no tree planted there, we would, there would be 4 feet of clear
Right.
walking path in that area.
Right.
But talking to the property owner, they would like to see a tree there back. Again, we haven't had a discussion to see if they would be fine with not having a tree there. But that could be something we do discuss if that is the commission's direction.
Thank you.
Commissioner Grayson.
So first of all, thank you for clarifying that in this instance, the city is the applicant and not the adjacent property owner. That would have been my first question.
Yep.
I did also do a field visit out to this site as for my ex parte disclosure. And I'll say, I noted the damage, and I could also see how there were prior attempts to make temporary fixes, as Engineer Nguyen has pointed out for us. And I was also able to appreciate firsthand, as also shown in the presentation, photos of the trees from 2021, that those really do appear to be thriving. Perhaps more so than a lot of other replacement trees that I've seen us install. So that's what I noted there. And I'll just confirm what I think I heard in the presentation is that so far there has not been a discussion with the adjacent property owner about selection of potential replacement trees.
Correct. In discussion with them, they did like the cherry plum tree that they saw planted as part of the previous project, but they did not have a specific tree in mind if that tree were to be replaced. So that would still be a discussion to further have with the property owner.
Okay, and that's it. Thank you.
Were there any discussions of replacing the tree at 901 21st Street?
Yes, I believe Commissioner Chairperson Hayes, you are referring to the tree to the west of that property at the corner.
Yeah, exactly.
Where that tree, and maybe I can pull it up here so we can all see. Give me 1 minute.
It's not as bad, but it's not perfect either.
Oh.
Yes. Let's see.
May I ask, where are you talking about?
Just
Down at the other?
a little
west
bit.
of
The
it?
next tree west.
Okay.
Yes. And I believe the commission should be able to see it on the screen. Yes, Chairperson Hayes is referring to this tree here at, in front of 901 21st Street. Another wood tree, very similar to the one we are discussing now. We did take a look at this tree. As mentioned, the trigger for the request to remove this specific tree at 921 or 909 21st Street was that the sidewalk is very damaged. As you can see, it is a big concern for the city and liability issue, and was included or is to be included in the scope of the upcoming sidewalk repair project. We did take a look at this sidewalk here. I'll zoom in a bit more. And from looking at it and walking in the field, is so far is not a trip hazard as of now. The ramp may not be in compliance, but in terms of hazards and trying to address any trip hazards, you can see that there was some grinding done in the past to address some uplifting and lips occurring through the walking path there. But as of now, there hasn't been any more uplifting to bring it up to a level of being a hazard from our assessment.
So you've got some lateral displacement in the curb,
Yes.
and you've got some vertical displacement on just to the east of there. If somebody's stepping up on that curb, it's not a great condition.
So I'm going to jump in. So I know when we tried to identify this location, we had a fairly lengthy list of high priority locations to address, and I think what we tried to do was address the worst of the worst. I'm sure we can find more locations if we were to cruise up and down this street, but I think what we were trying to do is get the worst locations. Highest need is part of this project, and we usually try to work highest priority down, and the one down the street was in a much worse condition. It's not that maybe there isn't more work. This location could potentially, might be a good candidate for grinding on that corner. It could be something that we follow up with separately, but we just didn't see the level of displacement at this location to warrant the tree removal at this time. But it is one that would probably be on a watch list. But once again, there are a number of locations that we're trying to tackle, and so we're just really trying to get the worst.
Okay, and then you're confident that there's going to be enough space from the edge of the tree well to the edge of the sidewalk?
Yes, again, that would limit our options of what tree could be planted in a smaller tree well. But yes, the design of the tree well would be done to ensure ADA access, and then that would kind of dictate what tree could be planted from the approved tree list.
Okay. There are no further questions from the commissioners. We'll go to public comment.
Yes, if there is anyone in the audience to make a public comment on this item, but I don't believe we see any. And Chairperson Hayes, we do not have anyone on Zoom looking to speak on this item either.
All right, moving on to deliberations.
Chairperson Hayes, sorry to interrupt. Could you officially close the public hearing so we can just make sure it's
Sure.
done? Thank you.
I hereby close the public hearing and move on to deliberations. Anybody have any?
Well, my first thought whenever I saw this tree was put concrete there, even though I know you'd mentioned as far as having just concrete on the sidewalks and no trees. It just seemed like it was made such a narrow sidewalk for those people with disabilities. And I just wonder if at some point in time, or is the ADA, the people who support the ADA, people with disabilities, are they going to come back and say, those trees need to be removed so that the sidewalk is certain?
So
width?
what was the minimum width that you have to have for when it necks down?
32 inches is the minimum over 2 feet.
Okay, so
It's just-
if I'm looking at this right now, roughly, it looks like you've got a tree well of 2 feet and concrete of 2 feet. So you have to make your tree well 6 inches smaller, and you'll have an 18-inch tree well. Is 18 inches enough size for a tree well?
For smaller tree species, yes. I would say we have similar, if not the same dimensions to the tree and the sidewalk repair done for the east as part of the previous paving project. So we would be essentially replicating that. And as Commissioner Grethen has mentioned and others, those cherry plum tree that were planted 3 years ago in those smaller tree wells, which I believe are like 18 inches by 2 feet, have been doing well so far.
Yeah, I had the same thought as you initially, but then hearing Andrew speak about that the ADA allows for you to neck the sidewalk down, and that's part of the ADA code, I'm okay with it, but I will say, I've had to reinstall things over 0.5% or, like, you make sure you've got, your 32.5 inches, just so that it's that you have it, because people will comment. Any other comments?
Well, I've heard what was raised. I appreciate those points being made, but I'm willing to support the staff recommendation. And as far as the selection of the tree, I trust, you will work closely with the adjacent property owner and let them know that among their options are these cherry plum trees that they can see for themselves and that they seem to be doing well. And I'll trust your discretion to suggest that without selling it too hard. I do believe, generally speaking, that the installation and maintenance of parkway trees represents a collaboration between the city and the residents. And for example, the onus that they have to maintain the tree and keep it in good health, in my opinion, means they should have quite a say in the selection of that tree that they will have to maintain. So that's why I would say to suggest, but use your discretion and that's just what, And then similarly, we from a design point of view, maybe it would be kind of neat if that area of town was known for having all those cherry plum trees or something. On the other hand, Hermosa's known for better or worse as having the eclectic mix architecturally. So those are just some thoughts about the tree replacement. I did notice the tree at 901. I didn't think it looked in too poor of condition, and I would like to defer to staff's prioritization for the sidewalk. So I will add that as well. Thank you very much, Chair.
Do we have a motion?
Sure, I'll go ahead and make the motion, even though I would prefer that the tree be removed and just concrete put in there. But if it does have enough width for the ADA with the tree there, ADA rules with the tree there, then I will make the motion just to go with the recommended action by the staff. To approve the removal of the carrotwood tree on the parkway fronting 909 21st Street and accept the installation of one replacement tree per the approved parkway tree list at 909 21st Street and one replacement tree at another location in the city. And can we put something in there that the sidewalk meets the ADA regulate? I mean, does that need to be put in there too, or?
And they have to follow code.
Yeah, I
Okay,
mean,
so,
perhaps,
yeah.
if I could interject, perhaps some flexibility that the desire is to plant a tree at this location, provided that staff is able to meet ADA minimum width and length requirements. I will say that the choke point requirements are 32 inches, or only allow for a short 2-foot distance, so the tree will be pretty small. So I think we need to maybe make exact measurements that tree will sustain that tree while maintaining that 32 inches for 2 feet.
Are there any vertical requirements? Because I was noticing on those trees that they were showing further east, it looked like the branches were impinging on the sidewalk because they just haven't gotten tall enough yet.
Right. Right, and so we typically would like to keep that 32-inch clear zone. Someone was in a wheelchair passing through. You would want to have it trimmed. I think that's the challenge with a younger tree, that those limbs are going to be potentially protruding into that area.
Correct. And it is the responsibility. And some of the property owners with some of those cherry plum trees along 21st Street have been trimmed to cut the branches kind of sticking in the walking way. So that'll be something the city will have to work with the property owners who are responsible for maintaining that tree. But that is kind of the cause of the case when the trees are younger until they grow a bit older and those limbs are kind of higher in the air.
Okay, so if I understand the motion, it's staff recommendation as long as the ADA requirements can be maintained and the size of the tree will, for the health of the tree, can be maintained.
Yes.
Do I have a second?
And I'm willing to second that motion, but I will comment that, to my knowledge, this is identical to the other sidewalks where we've done this previously.
Yes, that's what we believe. Of course, we will confirm and double check. But from our measurements and looking at the plum trees further east and at this location, it should be the same measurements. So as of now, it should be feasible, but that will be something we double check and just make sure.
I'm sorry, I was going to ask David a question. You said that this had been done previously, is that what you
Well, in
said?
2021, we replaced like 6 to 8 trees.
Yeah.
And then to me, I said, well, this is just another one to add to the list. I didn't see anything different about this. Although I appreciate the due diligence to make sure that it's still feasible. I don't have any heartburn with staff confirming that on their own.
Yes, we would just like that flexibility in case there is if we discover something in the field that just it's not feasible to achieve those ADA requirements. That would be our priority first. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
Yes,
let's have a vote.
and then voting will be open. All right, commissioners, voting should be open. All right, thank you. I will be closing the vote. And we have 3 yes for the motion to pass.
All right, we're going to move back up to 7C, CIP status report.
Thank you, Chair Hayes. So normally we would go through the report. I'm going to ask the commission if you prefer to cover that item as part of the CIP update for the upcoming year. We have a condensed version of the presentation that was given at study session, though still remains fairly robust. So I think we'll cover a lot of that and could provide an opportunity at that time if you wish, or I'm happy to answer any questions you have on the status sheet as well.
I'm okay with that if my fellow council.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm okay with that too. I had 3 mostly clarifying types of questions that I sent to Joe, and he replied. And also I didn't see anything urgent or significant that I needed to share about those responses. So I'm fine.
You know, I'm kind of lost in what y'all are referring. Are you referring to, what number are we on?
7C. And so what Joe is suggesting is we forego 7C because it will be covered in 13A.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So I'm fine with that. So moving on, we're on number 8, public comment. If there's anybody who would like to make public comment, general public comment on something of the purview of Public Works that is not on the agenda, now is the time to do so. Seeing no one in chambers, do we have anybody online?
No, Chairperson Hayes, and we only take these general public comments in person.
Oh, correct. Sorry. So I will close public comment and move on to commissioner comments. Does anybody have any comments, brief announcements, reports of subcommittee roles, etc.?
No.
No.
Nope. Okay, moving on. Consent calendar. Do I have any motions regarding the consent calendar?
Under 10A, I was absent,
Okay.
so I'm going to be abstaining.
So if she's abstains and we only have 2 people voting,
Right. So and please correct me if if I've got this wrong. From my understanding, the commission doesn't have particular voting rules around quorums. We just default to kind of general quorum voting rules, which would require a present and voting status in order for a vote to count. In that case, the abstention would not count for the vote. So we would have a 2-person vote for the 5-member body, which does not bring us to quorum, so we would not be able to vote on 10A or on the entire consent calendar if we're not removing 10A from that action. So the commission has a couple of options. They can simply continue the action to the next meeting in a couple of months, or Commissioner, if you feel comfortable and feel that you're not being present at the meeting does not prevent you from voting on this, you can still choose to vote. So I leave that to the commission to deliberate.
so I have a question for the
Yeah.
interim city manager. Typically, after we approve the minutes, they go on to the consent calendar for city council. It seems, and we only meet every 2 months, so it'll be July before council sees the March minutes. Can these be put on as unapproved action minutes so that they can at least see them and then there's a note that they're not approved because we had lack of quorum?
I personally don't see any problem with that. I can't say that I've dealt with that before. Do you foresee any particular objections?
I suppose we could notate it that they are pending a final approval by the commission. I don't think I've ever seen that.
No, because we've never had,
Yeah.
since I've been on these.
Yeah,
guys.
I've never seen it happen. If there's a way to do it, I suppose we could, if that's the path we choose.
Okay, so unless, Kathy, you feel like you're okay voting on the minutes, if not, then we should divide this into, well, let's divide it into 2 separate votes. So, right, so 10A, I move to approve item 10A, and then let's do a vote, right? And then if she
well-
abstains, then
Chairperson,
you'll
I
have to
believe
get
that
pushed to the next meeting.
Yeah, well, currently 10A and 10B are at the consent calendar, so if you wish to vote on them individually, we best to just pull it to move it to under 11, so they'll become separate items if.
Okay, I move to pull 10A from the consent calendar.
Second.
Okay. And I'll just take a vocal vote.
Aye.
Motion to pull item 10A from the consent calendar. Commissioner Dunbarton,
Yes.
Vice Chair Gretton,
Yes.
and Chairperson Hayes.
Aye.
Okay. So now for the consent calendar, we only have item 10B.
Okay. Does anybody have a motion regarding the remainder of the consent
I
calendar?
move to approve the balance of the consent calendar, which is item 10B only.
I'll second that.
All right, let's have a vote.
This one I will open to voting just for recording. Okay. Again, motion to approve the balance of the consent calendar item, which is 10B. Voting closed and motion is approved.
All right, moving on to items removed from consent calendar. Do I have a motion regarding item 10B?
Excuse me, Chair, do you mean 10A?
10A.
I move that we approve the minutes of the March 19th, 2025 Public Works Commission meeting.
Second.
Okay, I will open this voting vote.
In line.
Voting should be open. Voting is closed. Motion does not pass.
Okay, so it'll have to get pushed to our next meeting, and I will let the interim city manager figure out how he wants to handle it on the next council meeting.
Right. Yeah, I'm thinking that since it's going to have to return, it might be best not to bring it to the council consent calendar until they're final. Otherwise, we'd have to probably bring it back again, which could lead to confusion of two different sets of minutes. So I think my recommendation would be is we bring it back at the next commission meeting, and then it goes to the following consent calendar at city council.
That's fine.
Okay. And I don't think it was a typical heavy agenda item, so I'm just seeing what was on there. There was a hearing for tree removal on Monterey Boulevard in our PMP report.
All right. I'm going to move on. We've already taken care of item number 12. A and B, we're now on item 13, matters for commission consideration. Item 13A, fiscal year 25-26 capital improvement program. And as you stated, Mr. Director, the three commissioners that are here were all at the city council, the study session, so we've seen the full version, so an abbreviated version is appreciated.
Okay. Slightly abbreviated version. We've had a kind of a milestone year, so I definitely just do want to touch on a lot of the things that we've accomplished this year. With our Public Works team has been really dedicated, so I will try to go through some of these quickly, but I do want to emphasize some points because I think it is important to highlight at commission and continue to get commission's input on scoping and scheduling so that you can help inform our team as we move ahead delivering the CIP program. So we're on track for 15 projects completed this year, definitely a milestone year. It would have even been higher. There were 2 additional that we brought all the way through advertisement and contract award. So very close to getting even beyond 15. And we even added 2 urgent projects, and we've made a significant advancement through a number of the other CIPs across the program that has 38 projects. Our completion rate this year is, like I said, a record year. We completed, between last year and this year, we completed as many projects as the 7 years that predated that. So we've tripled our completion rate on average just this year. The team has really been working hard. I'm definitely proud of our team advancing these. As we look at the budget, what's available, we have a number of restricted and unrestricted funding sources. So while we do have a lot of requests and needs through the city, we do have to try to match those needs with the funding that is available. Our general fund is the most flexible, but those funds are limited. We do have a lot of other restricted funding sources that we do try to pair with the needs. So it is a balancing act of delivering needs that come in versus what we have for funding available. This slide's a little updated from what we presented at council. We currently have only 28 carryover projects, and so this has been revised based on the direction we received from City Council. 2 of the projects have been removed, 14th Street Restroom and Lot D. We're adding 8, so our total is going to be 36, still clocking in close to 34 million. Also, an updated slide from the study session is our kind of our backlog, as I like to describe, looking back at the last 10 to 15 years. And so what I've continued to explain is that we've had a significant amount of carryover projects, which are yellow, and we've aggressively worked to knock down backlog. And I think now with these adjustments, there's a dent, I think, in that trend, both from completion and removing lower priority projects. This year, there is one that has been removed. The park lighting assessment has been moved to unfunded, future deferred unfunded project. And as I noted earlier, there are two that have now completely come off the list, Lot D and 14th Street restrooms, or that will be the case should council approve the budget for FY 25-26, but that was the recommendation at study session. Projects, quickly to highlight what we've done just this year. There are a number that are fully complete and closed out. Our CDBG sidewalk improvement program, number of curb ramps and panels on Valley Drive in Monterey, spending our community development block grant funds. Our storm drain improvement project on 5th Street. This addressed a significant flooding issue that we had where we had a storm drain that really led to nowhere and flooded the greenbelt. We're able to tie into the county line. That was done significantly under budget. That was done just this fall in time for the rain season. We worked in close collaboration with Community Resources team to complete a comprehensive parks master plan that had involvement from our subcommittee, Public Works and Parks Commission, and ultimately was adopted by City Council and lays out a plan for the next 30 years. And, this isn't just capital projects in there. It also has programmatic and partnership type recommendations in there in addition to looking at larger infrastructure needs citywide. Our citywide roof repair to address a number of aging roofs, leaks that we had to deal with in some of our older facilities. That was completed early on in the fiscal year. And then we completed CIP 112 that addressed sidewalk issues at 21st Street and 24th Street. We have several projects that are in the closeout phase, so construction is substantially complete, or it may appear that there's nothing ongoing, but staff is still working on them to close them out. Our Greenbelt project was reached substantial completion in February. The contractor just pulled all the orange fencing, I believe it was last week, now that the additional hydro seeding we had to do additional hydro seeding after heavy rain swept away a lot of the seed. It didn't get a chance to establish before the heavy rain season came in. We did additional grading work at the 11th Street ramp that goes up to Ardmore Street. That work is complete, and our team is working on closeout of that project as the final punch list items. Our Bard storm drain project addressed at the corner of Bard and Oak. That project is complete, and we just had a turn on of 20 electric charging stations behind City Hall. That was just about a week ago. We have some final items to resolve before that's fully closed out, but all the charging stations are now functional. And there are a number of projects that are in progress. So while we can't complete 38 projects in a year or work on 38 in a year, there are a number that we are advancing through various stages of development, most notably Clark Building, which is really closing in on the end of construction. Right now, one of the final elements that we've been waiting for is SCE coordination for the energizing the building. We have that now scheduled for Tuesday, the 27th, to work on energizing, which will then allow us to test the HVAC equipment and get final inspections from our building department and LA County Public Health. They're working on completing all the finishings inside the building, and we're working on kind of the final punch list and inspection items, but we are very, very close to completing that project, so we're very excited about that. We're also able to get a reimbursement from the Clean Power Alliance that we're going to be working on to recoup some of the funds for some of the energy conversion elements switching over from gas to electric. That will not delay the project. That will be ongoing as a reimbursement process as we move forward. We have paved a lot of roads in the last couple weeks. So this is our parking lot A and annual paving project. I believe all the concrete and paving work is now complete. There's some additional paver work that's ongoing, and we are working to coordinate with the striping crews to come in, signage and striping work that's going to be coming over the coming weeks. We're able to get all the spaces marked out in Lot A about a week and a half ago, and there's some other adjustments that we have to do with parking meter locations, but we are getting very close to the end of this project. Pier Avenue, Valley Drive, Lot A, and a number of residential streets throughout the city. And this is well ahead of schedule. We have a very large SOAR project. We're, I think, about 60% complete, I believe, at this point. Very big, 3.7 million, number of locations throughout the city, almost a mile of SOAR that we're addressing. South Park is currently well underway, doing landscape and irrigation repair. We've been able to maintain access to certain areas of the park while this is ongoing. We're trying to target completion before the end of the fiscal year. I think some of the good news on this is that we got a really good bid that came in from a qualified contractor, way below what we had estimated with our designer and budgeted in the CIP. So we're able to bring those costs down, and then more importantly, through getting outside funding through the county and through the West Basin turf removal program, we're able to cover about almost 3/4 of the project cost for the base contract. So this is coming in well below, which is allowing us to release or propose to release a significant amount of funds in the coming year for the CIP. So other things that are moving on the current CIP list that I want to go through: utility box wrapping. There's actually one more missing. We just wrapped the 15th box, I believe is yesterday or the day before. So we're working on, with the artists, on finalizing the design for the remaining boxes. These will be rolling out about one per month. Will be ongoing through probably October, but they look great. Our pier, we are wrapping up a very comprehensive top to bottom, above and below water inspection of our pier that was due. They're due about every 5 years. So we completed major repairs to the pilings 2 years ago, the columns underneath. We knew that the deck repairs would be next. There are a substantial amount of deck repairs that are required. Currently, the structural team is looking at order of magnitude of about almost $7 million of improvements that are going to have to advance in the next 5 years. We are looking to phase this with the highest priority repairs needing to be completed within a 1 to 2 year timeline, which we are proposing at a budget for that so we can advance the highest priority repairs. There is great urgency to wrap up the design because the permitting is a very lengthy process through Coastal Commission. And then we have to advertise and bring in a contractor and complete that work within the 2 year time frame. So we really do need about 1 to 2 years even just to complete that. So we need to move quickly. We just completed sensor-based testing. I will say that there was good news that came back. We do think that we can reduce some of the scope of some of the repairs that might bring down the total costs, which may allow us to do some of the more medium priority repairs on the near term. But we have asked our design team to put together a more comprehensive report, including a bit of a cost-benefit analysis as we look at a little bit long-term. It's something that I think we do plan to bring to City Council in the next couple months to have a more comprehensive talk about the pier and kind of what this first round of repairs will accomplish versus what might lie ahead in the next 3, 5, or 10, 15 years ahead of us. Parking lot structure C. We have split out the elevator work that completed the roof repair for the elevator core, all the abatement work inside the elevator. We have a dedicated contractor to do the elevator refurbishment. That work's going to be ongoing through the summer. We've been working to schedule the actual shutdown and refurbishment for the week after the 4th of July. That's the tentative schedule right now, so there'll be some disruptions to the elevator service during that time. But that will also allow that contractor to be out of the way for when we bring in the structural repair team. That contract was awarded at the last council meeting on May 13th, and we are working to execute that contract now that it's been approved with potential start date after the busy summer season, likely to begin in October. Our Hermosa Avenue Green Streets project to address our storm drain commitments. This is in partnership with our watershed management cities. This is led by the city of Torrance. They advertised the project. They did award the contract. And so the city is working with them on a upcoming pre-construction meeting to talk about timeline. And we are advocating for a fall start. I think the contractor is looking to begin in the summer, but we're advocating for our portion of the construction to begin after the busy summer period, because a lot of the work would be on the gutters along Hermosa Avenue in some of the adjacent streets. Kelly Courts, this project, we advertised, the bids were rejected at City Council in February. We had our special meeting at Public Works Commission and Parks Commission to reevaluate this, and we did get direction to bring it back to City Council from both commissions without changes, and we received approval on April 22 to re-advertise the project. The team is updating the package over the coming weeks, and we will be reissuing the advertisement probably sometime next month, and look forward to getting that back out to bid. Our real-time crime center project, this is a federally funded project led by our police department. This is a coordinated effort with police, city manager's office, and public works, where we are working on, they've actually done a number of purchases for some of the equipment that we need. There's some software elements, a lot of back-end technology, and we are working with them closely on bringing in a potential contractor to do the camera systems, but we do have a spending deadline of March, so we are working to aggressively advance this as quickly as we can so that we can retain our funding and deliver the project. Our civic facilities and needs assessment, really looking at the civic center. We have ongoing outreach. We've launched a dedicated website. Our outreach team is going to do a pop-up event this weekend at the Fiesta Hermosa, and we have ongoing meetings with the Civic Advisory Committee. I think there's one potentially planned in the next month or two, TBD with that date, and more to come on that, but that's all I have for right now. I do want to highlight PCH Aviation Mobility Improvement Project. I think this is one that has been in the pipeline for a very long time. This is a massive project. Just to be very clear, it includes all of PCH, which is a Caltrans facility, from Artesia to Horondo, and it also includes Aviation Boulevard from Prospect to PCH. And this is building off of studies that were originated in 2014. There was master plans done on those corridors, looking at potential safety improvements. And then after that, there was a 2015 report that was sent to Caltrans with various alternatives. And so this builds off of that 2015 study. Right now, we have been working closely with Metro, who is administering the funding through the COG on behalf of the city. We had done some initial alternative development about a year and a half, 2 years ago, but we didn't have sufficient funding to advance through the PA and ED phase. Staff has worked with Metro to apply through the COG for an additional $3 million in funding. We received initial indication from the COG about a week and a half ago that we have made it through the COG board, and the funding is now is going to the Metro board for consideration for potential award. So looks like good news so far, but we do have to get through that process. That funding, should the Metro Board approve it, would not become available till a funding agreement is advanced, likely early in calendar year 26. Similarly, for the ped safety and bus stop improvement project, staff has also submitted an application to the COG for funding because we are trying to reserve our local funding and bring in outside resources where we can. And this project was a good match for the Measure M. We submitted an application for $440,000. This, just like PCH, made it through the initial COG approval and is with the Metro Board. So we're hoping for good news for potential funding. This would only fund the design phase, design and planning and permitting phase. That would allow us to get started with the conceptual design, community outreach to further scope this. And as that process advances, we would then potentially reapply to the COG for construction funding for the next cycle. So the goal is to try to bring in outside funding as much as possible for this because there's bus safety and potential bike elements that align well with outside grants. We are proposing to make some adjustments to CIP 113. Originally, this was the pay-by-app CIP, but we are looking to modify the scope of work in the upcoming year to be a multi-space meter deployment. In the proposed budget, we're looking for about $300,000 just to do the initial phase, where we would replace single head meters to multi-space meters on Pier Avenue and in Lot D, would be phase one. To do the whole project citywide, we're looking at about a $2 million project, so that's why we're trying to do it in bite-sized pieces. There is some things that we do need to sort out for the deployment. We need to look at how to replace the signs because each meter post has individual parking regulation signage on it. And so with this, we would, while meter posts and signs would come down, we would have to think through how to put back the correct signage for enforcement and just informational signage about where the pay stations are. But that is a proposal in front of City Council as part of the overall budget. But overall, our meters are in poor condition, so whether or not we go ahead with the multi-space meters, there is a need eventually to replace the poles and the housings, which are in very poor shape. One of our surprise projects this year was the Base 3, which houses our community services officers. We did have an electrical fire or electrical incident in fall. Staff did create this project at mid-year. We are actually looking to advertise the design for the electrical update next Thursday is the tentative date to go out to advertise. And we are looking to expedite that so we can bring our officers back into that building as soon as we can. The other project that was added at mid-year was the community center. We don't have working gas or heat in that building. We had a shut-off service as there's a leak that could not be found in that building. We have terminated service and we are working on a new design for a gas connection to that facility to restore heating for next winter. We've had to survive with some space heaters. That project design is nearly complete. We added funds at mid-year and it's going to go at advertisement in a few weeks, so we're getting pretty close. As we look ahead to the next year, we have 8 new projects proposed. 2 of them are paving. Remains high need to pave. I noted the pavement management plan that we updated. We do it every 3 years. Our pavement condition index has fallen since it was done a few years ago. I will say we've made great strides at increasing funding levels over the last couple of years. We have a very large paving project that's out there. The challenge is that we really do need to invest $3.1 million in paving dollars. That excludes design, construction management, or any kind of associated concrete work that goes with it. So we are looking at a higher funding level for next year. This number actually is adjusted from the study session where council did give us direction for redistributing some of the funds from the 14th Street restroom to this project. So we've actually increased the allocation by about a couple $100,000 to 3.62 million. And this will work on addressing high priority paving needs through the city. And then we've also added a second project, the slurry seal. The city has not done slurry in a number of years, and this is to preserve roads that are in that good condition and make sure that they don't slip into the next category where we would have a more costly repair. So this is hopefully going to help reduce deferred maintenance costs into the future. We talked earlier about the Greenwich Village undergrounding project. That project bids are coming in next week. So stay tuned for more information on that, but staff will be overseeing the award and construction of that project should it move forward. One of the priority projects that we are recommending this year is replacement of the windows of the community center. They are in very poor condition. Our team does respond to a number of work orders at that building for issues with the windows. It is a locally designated historic building, so we will need to bring in an architect with expertise to advise on an appropriate window treatment to put on there. The funding that we're seeking is really only going to be adequate for that, hopefully to cover the design, or at least the preliminary design and some of the permitting that might go with it. And then we would come back to City Council at a future time for an additional budget request for the cost of the actual window replacement. But this is to get it advanced so that we can really scope it out in terms of what needs to be done and what the order of magnitude costs will be to replace the windows. We have a sidewalk project that will advance. This will continue to address high priority safety or ADA issues. I think two things that we are going to add into this, in addition to the regular sidewalk improvements, is really formalizing 2 crosswalks across Ardmore. We have received a number of requests from the community in that area from 25th Street North for enhancing crossing conditions on Ardmore. There are not many designated crossing locations, and so we have been working with our traffic engineer, identified 2 locations, one at 25th and one at Longfellow, where we could potentially install a crosswalk with the ADA landing and supplemented with a rectangular rapid flashing beacon at those 2 locations. So that would be included in this sidewalk project. We do have another round of our community development block grant funds. We get about $80,000, $90,000 each year. We are required to spend every 2 years, so we do need to spend these funds next fiscal year. And while we are awarding a contract, or we have awarded a contract, and we'll be advancing on high priority structural repairs in Lot C, there is a phase 2 to that. The original project that was envisioned in 2021 and design completed and contract awarded recently addressed the highest priority and what we had funding levels for. This second phase would address all the other remaining elements that were identified in the 2021 assessment. There are some other medium and lower priority structural repairs that were identified in that initial assessment that have now elevated to the medium or higher priority that would be addressed in this project, as well as all the interior and exterior painting that we wanted to do at the conclusion of all the structural repairs. This project is also only partially funded, given that there were limited funds to go around to cover the needs for this upcoming year. So this would fund at least the design work that would need, and then once we flesh out the costs, we would seek additional construction funding from City Council at that time, once we know more about what the cost needs would be. We are proposing a playground equipment enhancement project. This would address a number of repairs at Valley Park and a complete replacement of one of the structures that is now very outdated and we can really no longer repair. The parts are not readily available, as well as a new rubberized mat, We have also a full replacement of one of the equipment at Seaview Park, and then there is also a rubberized mat repair at South Park that would be included in this project. One of the other main components is the integrated sunshades. We have received requests over the last couple of years for enhancing shade at the playgrounds, and so the newer structures generally have that integrated feature, and that's what we are proposing here. So overall, I think some of the good news is that we did have a lot of projects that came in under budget. We got some good bids this year, and we had really reserved a fair amount of contingency for a number of projects, so we're able to release more than $3 million back for projects that completed under what was the council-approved budget, which did allow us to reallocate those funds. But there were a number of needs this year, some big needs, paving and structural repairs on the pier, as well as a number of other projects that have to advance. So funding does remain constrained, and there are a number of unfunded needs. And so I just want to reemphasize that out of the currently programmed projects, not everything is fully funded. I mentioned a couple already. And then as we look to recurring projects that we need to fund in the next 5 years, paving, sidewalks, the things that we know that we're going to need to spend money on every single year, we're looking at about a $60 million unfunded need over the next 5 years. So there's going to need to be continued commitment to allocate funds to those priority projects to either complete what we have or address the recurring projects that remain a high priority. There's also a number of projects that are listed in the 5-year CIP that are not funded. These are not CIP projects, but are listed as potential future unfunded projects, and those are, a significant order of magnitude in potential costs that would have to be visited in the future. One of them, notably, our City Yard project, which is not fully funded. So as we looked at all the needs, and what I want to keep reminding everyone is that while there are 36 projects proposed for next year, we cannot complete 36 in one fiscal year. This is a multi-year CIP. So we do try to prioritize what absolutely has to be completed to address urgent needs, other safety needs, or address funding requirements or other state, federal regulatory requirements and other council priorities. So while every project is important on the list, we did have to work on kind of the sequencing of how these projects would be delivered, which is a function of funding, but also more importantly, staff capacity to deliver those. And the other piece that I'll put in there is the capacity of how much construction activity the city can reasonably deliver. I think we have a lot of projects under construction right now, and I think there is a bit of a critical mass of how much we can do. And I will emphasize with the community, we do try our best to schedule when these are going to fall. And so we look at that purple band of when these are going to fall. Some are not always in our control of exactly when they're going to happen, but we do try to schedule the work depending on the impact to minimize the impact to the community the best that we can. But there is also a need to continue to deliver these projects. And so if we move one or two out, it does affect the schedule for the others. So we did kind of look at that careful balancing during CIP study session. I won't go through these in detail now, but I'm happy to answer any questions about the sequencing of what projects we are looking to deliver next year, while some would have to wait till the following fiscal year to either begin or be constructed. So highlight a lot, we got a lot done this year, but we have a lot more to do. Workload is significantly heavy and the funding is very constrained moving forward. But we are trying to balance the available budgets with the highest needs. I think one lesson learned, or one thing to be cognizant of, I would say, is that, this year we had a very full CIP, but we had some surprises. Base 3, community center, gas. I hope that we don't continue to have surprises, but there will be. There's always going to be something new that's going to come in that we're going to have to readjust our funding or our schedule needs. So while we can do our best to predict delivery schedule, it's largely going to be a function on staffing levels, funding availability, and the unknown surprises that may still jump ahead of us. This is our kind of work plan for the year, but it's subject to change, depending on a number of factors that are outside our control. At study session, we had a very robust discussion on the proposed plan as a whole, as well as a number of topic areas. So I'm going to go through some of the direction that we did receive. We did ask council to take votes to give us direction on how to address a few topics. One was the 14th Street restroom. That project has been removed from the CIP, and instead, staff is going to be proposing a supplemental budget item to advance as a maintenance project on a much faster timeline. And I think what we explain to council is let us get in there and do some work, and we can revisit the need to either reestablish this project in the future or determine whether or not these are sufficient for the time being doing these. But I do think that we can make a lot of improvements to that facility with our maintenance team and by pulling in certain trades through small contracts such as masonry, roof repair, and other work. But there are a number of things that we can do to address that facility. Council did recommend to defund the Lot D CIP, so we are going to propose to remove that in the next budget. Staff is reaching out to granting agencies to wind down that project, but council recommended that it does not continue. There was also discussion about the potential reuse of the storage lot adjacent to the Civic Center. So while not a CIP yet, there was a lot of discussion about the potential reuse of that facility and whether or not it could be used for potential swing space, either for the city yard or for any potential renovation or other project at the Civic Center facility here. There is a need to renegotiate the lease that's going to come due at the end of next month. And so council did create a subcommittee with 2 council members to work with staff on those potential renegotiations. And then we would revisit the long-term use in about a year. As for the city yard, we did outline the pros and cons at kind of great length in the CIP study session report, really weighing the pros and cons of traditional design bid build as our traditional delivery model for advertising versus a design build. Council did request that we bring that back as a joint study session with Council and Public Works Commission at a later date. That's likely to be after budget adoption, so hopefully sometime in the summer we can bring that forward soon so that project can advance. So at this time, we're not able to advance that project until we resolve the delivery model preference by Commission and City Council, and then we can hopefully develop next steps at that time. Finally, we did ask Council to give overall input just on scoping of the overall CIP and the sequencing, and they did approve to go ahead with the staff recommended sequencing with a few modifications. Of course, 14th Street restroom and Lot D that have been removed. They asked if we could advance the playground replacement sooner, taking the slot that we had envisioned for Lot D. We were asked to table the tsunami siren project for another year and revisit. There didn't seem to be consensus to move forward with the recommendation at this time for now. So that would be revisited. In the meantime, staff could continue to explore grant opportunities. And council wanted to create a subcommittee with 2 members to further discuss the downtown lighting project. There was discussion about both downtown lighting and a more broad topic about general beautification in the downtown. And so this subcommittee would look at further scoping the lighting CIP and giving additional input on desire for beautification in the downtown and where that would potentially fall. So that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer questions.
Do we have any questions for the Public Works Director / interim city manager?
I have some, but
Go ahead.
okay. First of all, I'd like to compliment you or whoever, excuse all my comments on it, whoever made this up with the council direction needed. After listening to everything that y'all talked about with all the CIPs, and I thought, how is the city council ever even going to be able to think about this tonight? And I felt like you made it very, well, it didn't make it very simple, but made it simpler with what was drawn up. I did have some, as far as the recommended actions, the 14th Street restroom, I know that one time I saw you out there, Joe, and we discussed just, but wasn't there a sewer system or a water system or something that was going to have to be redone in the CIP?
Yes, thank you. So the facility was closed for an extended time through COVID. One of the primary issues was the sewer pump system inside the facility. We actually tried to see what we could do to reopen it. It was about two and a half years ago. We were able to open it before the summertime of 2 or 3 years ago, and what really needed was the sewer pump needed to be replaced. Our crews did buy the equipment and do that work themselves. And then just this two or 3 months ago, we actually installed a secondary pump system, which is a backup to provide a little more reliability for it. So that was one of the, I think, main reasons why it was really closed. And I think before that, it was not always open year-round because there was concerns about that system, which we have since done some repairs. I mean, it won't last forever, the repairs that we did, but I think it allows it to operate safely. But I think some of the other things that we want to do with our crews are, the windows have gone into poor shape. They've been boarded up. There's no airflow. We're looking to replace the louvered windows. There's a missing sink, a missing urinal. There's a damaged door. There's damaged partitions. So things that I think that we can do on a maintenance basis, along with painting, and then some of the brickwork that needs to be done. But the goal is to try to give this a little bit of a facelift at a lower cost.
Good. I was happy to see that. I wasn't sure. I assumed that something had been fixed with the sewer, or else you wouldn't be going forward with that. To defund the Lot D CIP, when Lot D, when the planning was done for it, it was basically keeping the same number of parking places in Lot D. Then all of a sudden we had COVID, and then we had the restaurant decks, and then the restaurant decks were going to go away and the parking was going to be replaced, and now the restaurant decks are being kept. So therefore there's quite a lot of parking that's been lost in the downtown area. And I know at the meeting last night, the restaurant owner had talked about that more parking was needed downtown. So I was happy to see that Lot D was defunded, and maybe the city will look at doing a 2-story parking lot. I think Rob Seaman had mentioned it, where there'd be an entrance off of Manhattan Avenue for the 2nd story and an entrance off of the alley for a bottom story. But something to be talked about later on. It was, I thought it was good that they did put off funding the CIP afterward. I think more thought needs to be put into it. The storage lot sounded interesting. The playground replacement, how much is that going to, I've seen several, 450,000, I've seen 70,000. How much is that going to cost?
So right now, the proposal is about $450,000, what we have in there, but it's 2 new structures at 2 different parks, a number of replacements at one of the structures at Valley, and then there's the other rubberized mat replacements that would be done at 2 locations. So this is generally what it costs. We have found a way to do it through a cooperative purchase agreement, which would allow us to really it would be an expedited process. Generally, we get pretty good pricing through the co-op agreement, and we wouldn't have to do a lengthy design phase. We could actually, through a contract award at council, award a contract for companies that do these installations. I think it's probably the most efficient way to do it, but this is what these equipment, it does cost this much.
Yeah.
We have shopped around, I think for something of that size that is durable that we would want, does cost in that ballpark.
It was just hard for me to believe that, and then whenever I saw 70,000 somewhere, I thought, that sounds much more logical, that, okay. The other thing about Lot D is, anyone ever thought about just asking for ideas from the public for, something where, I don't know if ideas were submitted in 2015 or not, or, just if anybody would have a design competition or something for it. The tsunami, I don't think we've ever had a tsunami here that I know of. And then on the corporate yard delivery method, I still really do not understand what that is. Is it going to be someone who's going to plan it and oversee it, or?
Right. So the primary decision at hand is how do we want to construct the project. And so I think the last 2 study sessions that we had with City Council, there was, not this last one, but the 2 before that, there was a fair amount of discussion at those meetings and some other meetings where council members had expressed interest in going design, build, delivery, which really instead of our traditional where we hire an architect, which is a qualifications-based selection, design it, advertise it, and then bring in a contractor at a low bid. The difference is that we bring in a team that is the architect and the builder all on one team, and you hire them with a qualifications-based selection. And so the thought, I think the desire at the time was to potentially transfer more risk to the builder through a design-build process, and also the desire to have a more qualifications-based selection versus the low bid seemed desirable at the time, but I think we are seeking clarity on if that is the process that we want to go forward with. There are definitely pros and cons with either one, and I think we are just, given the magnitude of this project, it will be a big project, we want to make sure that we have clear direction from council on how they want to proceed.
Okay. And those were basically the questions I had.
David?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Hayes. I'll touch on a few things, realizing that I provided written and oral comments during the CIP study session. I'll touch on some of the highlights there. I may be jumping around a little bit based on my notes. Let me mention, in response to the design build, there's an excellent staff report attachment to the CIP study session that's going to explain a lot, and it's really worth, certainly before we have our joint session, reading that in detail and really thinking about it. And one thing I found in looking at it so far is, there's more to it than a decision between design build versus design bid build. It really has to do, in my view, so far, as to how we put together a thoughtful plan for the program. And I think, and another thing to note is there's something called progressive design build, which seems to be recommended so far. And I see a lot of opportunities under that umbrella of progressive design build to kind of systematically manage the risks associated with such a large, complex project. So I'm looking forward to really seeing if, what potential may lie therein. In general, on the sequencing, I love the program you put together. I agree with your sense of priorities. I support it. Not only do you have a good handle on what's coming up for the next year, but I think you've got a really solid core program for at least year two, at this point. Given that we're going to have a budget study session coming up, I also been looking at your budget attachment as well as your 5-year budget that you're putting forth. One of the things that had concerned me in going back a few years was the degree to which we did our cost estimating and maintain those estimates and put them in our plans. What I've seen over the last few years is that we've been a lot more rigorous in doing that and in judiciously allocating so that when bids come in, there's less likelihood of a shortfall. So, and so I took a look at next year's, and it turned out that a lot of the things in next year's are either new things, so you had to necessarily take a fresh look at the budget allocation, or in some cases, in things like street paving, there's sort of a kind of buy it by the slice where we can kind of back in, I think, to the amounts. What I'm saying is I have confidence in the budget that you've put together based on what I've seen so far, at least for covering us for the coming year and maybe 2 years. Speaking of budgets, if I had to pick your 2 most important slides in your package, one is the one that shows all the progress you made, and the other one is the one that acknowledges that we've got tens of millions of dollars of unfunded programmed projects. People really need to take note of that if they're thinking about doing something new on top of that. For example, Lot D, for example, if you wanted to do like a parking structure or something there. Let's see, also in terms of budgets, the point you made, Joe, about Base 3 electrical and community center gas, absolutely, unplanned events can happen and they can be substantial. So it's good that we have a certain amount of robustness in our planning process. And it looks like you were able to absorb those 2 substantial unplanned events in planning for next year. So a lesson learned there, and kudos for factoring that in for next year. On paving, I'm a big fan of paving. Excellent report we got and discussion that we had. I thought it was great that you're starting to introduce slurry seal projects as well as the major rehabilitation projects. It's a 2-pronged approach that gives us the cost efficiency of the slurry seals on the better streets, but also paying attention to streets that have needed to be fixed for a long time. So I like that thinking on that. Just kind of checking off my list here. A couple of things that I noted that going out, and this also has to do with the 5-year in general. I like the way you are proactive in communicating some of the larger out-year needs. The community center windows, I saw that even though I think the slide said TBD, I think you did put a $3 million placeholder in the 5-year plan. You mentioned the phase 2 for Lot C. I don't see anything in there. I'm not trying to pick on you. I'll make my point in a second. There was also the pier structural repairs, another $3 million. I didn't see that in the 5-year plan. I think part of the challenge with the 5-year plan is if you put numbers in there, they may not really even be the right numbers at this point, and if you want everything to add up, so you're kind of darned if you do and darned if you don't. So regardless of how people scrutinize the 5-year plan or if it has everything in it or not, I can see that through your slideshow presentations, you are communicating what those needs are. So just keep communicating what those needs are and those shortfalls, because then that goes back to my point of what I thought one of your most important slides was there. And then also, the other slide again, the progress. 2 years in a row of dramatic increase in the amount of progress between getting the staff on board, which still has some challenges, but getting the staff on board and actually then once you have them, getting them to actually spend time working on the CIPs, instead of being overwhelmed with walk-on work and other unplanned work, because I thought that was a challenge as well. Somehow it's coming together. So congratulations on a second year of substantially improved project progress. Appreciate it very, very much. Thank you.
I agree.
All right, I've got just a few questions. When you were talking about the parking meters, you talked about that, I forget what the cost was, but it was a huge number. I thought that Park Mobile was supposed to bear a big chunk of that cost. Am I or is that a different part of the CIP, or?
I think it's slightly different. Park Mobile is the mobile payment app, which will be deployed separately on all meters, and you can do that with a sticker. And I think separately there's another vendor that handles the meter heads. And my understanding is that the fees that we pay for the electronic meter heads would exceed what we would pay if we switched to a multimeter. And so by switching systems and considering the replacement cost for those meter heads, we'd actually save money on an annualized basis by switching systems. The other issue is that we do need to replace all the posts in the housings, which are in really bad shape. And I think that cost we're also taking into consideration too, but I think overall that we would save.
Okay, so, if years down the road, is it going to be like in Redondo Beach where you still have a Park Mobile meter where, you can use the app and punch the number in, or you can pay there, or is it going to be you have to walk down to the corner and put the number of the spot into the kiosk?
I am probably not the best one to answer all that. Great questions. I don't know the answer. One of our senior management analysts in the city manager's office is really shepherding the effort and would probably know the details of it. I know we're also coordinating with administrative services because it's also going to have to get tied to some of the automated enforcement that might need to be done if we switch to the multimeter space. So I think they're trying to tie it in with the automatic license plate reader.
Right.
And that would have to be established before we switch to the system.
Okay. You mentioned that our PCI is currently at a 68. Is that before or after Pier Avenue and Prospect Avenue over the last couple of years? When was that done?
After Prospect, but before now.
Okay.
So I think it was all late 24.
Okay, so it could potentially be a little higher since we just did a pretty lengthy pavement project.
Yes, no, that's correct.
Okay. And then what's do we go out and do a survey to figure out what the PCI is, or do we just say, this is what it was before, and we're taking all this poor condition road and making it excellent, so it's going to increase it by whatever?
We have to update it every 3 years is what we're required to do through Metro. So we'll do it again. I think there are methods to try to calculate it, but I think it's a guesstimate because the condition's always changing.
Okay.
But I think the goal is if we get our spending limits at least stay at 3.1 or higher, we're either maintaining or improving.
Okay. my favorite topic, Lot D. So council defunded it and wasted, do we know how much we spent on design and putting it out to bid? I'm just twisting the knife a little bit. It's not that important.
I don't have the numbers with me, but
That's fine. It's not that important. But it was a lot of money. Then what I got out of the CIP study session is, yeah, we're not going to do the plan that was designed and put out to bid. We're going to do something better. But nobody is saying what better is. Who decides what the highest and best use of that property is, and who gives Public Works direction to move forward with that?
right, it's a good question. I think there was not explicit direction given, other than
Shocking.
the motion that was carried was to defund defund the lot DCIP and explore other uses for the lot, but there was no specific direction on how we would explore it. I think it was more, there were a lot of ideas talked about that night from different council members. So I think it was maybe left open for future consideration, but really nothing at this time that staff would actively work on unless council directs us to.
Okay. That's fine. I just, that's been a source of frustration for quite a while for me. And on a related note, do you see any current CIPs where early design input from council or Parks and Rec would be important?
There are probably several. Wayfinding project
Okay.
will be coming. It's Gateway, wayfinding, downtown wayfinding, and Marquee will absolutely need input from the community. And right now, we're only scoped for conceptual, so that will be the primary goal of that. I'm just trying to go down the list here. I would say with the pier, I think we want council to understand where we're investing our money. I think that there are going to be repairs that we really need to do because we need to address some repairs on the very near term. But I think where we draw that line of what ends up being deferred versus what has to happen in the next couple of years, I think is going to spin off a larger discussion once we have a better sense of kind of what's to come in the next 3, 5, 10 years.
Do you have a sense, because somebody will ask the question of what does a new pier cost?
Tens of millions.
Somebody will ask, that's why I
Yeah,
figured
I agree.
might
And that's a number that I'm hoping to have because I think what we're asked our team to do is come up with a cost benefit of sort of, as the structure ages, we can kind of start to predict what the intervals of repair are going to be. But the reality is that we're going to be repairing it every 3 to 5 years likely. And so those are the types of frequency that we want to better understand and what those costs will be. And where's the kind of decision point for when you want to look at replacement versus continual repair. It's 60 plus years old. It won't last forever, but I'm hopeful that we can get a couple more decades out of it before we have to go new. It's not, but I think that's what we're looking for more input on.
Okay.
I don't think it's imminent, but one day we'll have to make a big decision. I think City Yard. I think when we get our community center windows going, those are definitely something that I think the community might want to give input on. I think we have to try to find something that fits with the historic character of the building. So I think that would be a really good opportunity. Those are the should we be successful in receiving funding for the bus stop safety and pedestrian crossing project, that will have a large community outreach component once we get in conceptual design and really kind of scope up the changes, because it might look at median closures, potential extension of bike lanes. That one will definitely have outreach, as well as the PCH mobility study, PCH aviation. That is a huge, huge project. I can't emphasize it enough, but that will require significant outreach. And of course, our civic facilities.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah. But no, thank you for asking that. I think those are the ones that come top of mind.
no, I think that, and I said this in my public comment at the CIP session, is that we need to figure out a way to, if we're going to make changes to projects, make them when they're cheap and not at the end when they're expensive. And some of our council members don't seem to care that it's expensive, it's not expensive, we're going to change our mind anyway. And so that's all I have. Anybody have anything else?
I had another question about, you were talking about the pier. And this is a silly question, I am sure, but what if we shortened the pier at some, not anytime soon, but just shortened it at some point in time? I mean, does it really need to be as long as it is? That was it.
The new pier can be shorter.
Yeah.
20 years or 50
It could
years.
certainly be a discussion point for the
Not-
future.
What?
Yeah, it certainly could be a discussion point for the future,
Yeah.
whether that makes sense. But,
Not now.
but yeah, piers are costly to maintain,
Yeah.
but also provide a good benefit. And the length does provide kind of that quietness out at the end of the pier. So there's definitely pros and cons of having a longer
Right.
versus a shorter pier, and something to look at for the future.
I was just thinking about repairs and whatever. That's it.
All right, do I have a motion to receive and file?
So moved.
Yep, I'll second it.
All right, do we need a vote?
Yes, let me open up the voting real quick. All right, voting should be open. All right, closing the vote. 3 yes, the motion passes.
All right, moving on to future agenda items. Does anybody have any future agenda items? My only comment is, and I know you're doing 2 jobs right now, so it's not urgent, but Councilmember Detoy's future agenda item for the council meeting about how Public Works can get more involved or whatever that is. And in my mind, I see that as more as how do we collaborate with council and Parks and Rec to avoid problems like Kelly Courts and Lot D and that sort of thing. I don't think we need to talk about that here, but it's just kind of a reminder. No public comment. It brings us to adjournment. Thank you, everybody.